What is up, my Lorcana Goons, and welcome back to the Lorcana Goons channel. We're back with another Monday Meta Watch video where Zach Stone and I are going to go over Lorcana meta trends, tournament results, and what you need to be expecting for your next tournaments this coming weekend. We just finished 2 CCQs and a DLC, so we have some awesome results to go over, some spicy deck lists because some of the events were different formats, right? But we're going to start off with the first place Sapphire Steel list from David Fairweather, taking down the Wakefield CCQ. I know Sapphire Steel has a cult following, so there's plenty of celebration on my timeline that this deck won a CCQ, so huge congrats to David over here for representing the Sapphire Steel community. I think this deck is really strong, don't you, Zach?
Yes, and Lorcana Goons, if you are not prepared for Sapphire Steel, then you will get punished because this deck is going to bring out big characters early on in the game. And let's go over some of the card choices here because we always used to seeing Tipo, Cinderella's, Sales, that's your necessity for ramp. And of course with Cinderella you have some more princesses like Namari's and Kitas, and of course your late game characters like Tinkerbell, Hades, and Vincenzo, and Headless Horseman. But some of the interesting tech cards, we have one copy of the King Arthur. This is the King Victorious Shift, and I gotta say this is a very, very interesting card, giving the character an ability to challenge ready characters and have challenger and resist. Just means it's taking out whatever it wants. Tinkerbell challenging ready characters is also very scary. I think this is also a card that when you're not expecting it, it can just take over the game. And don't forget Spooky Sight to take out a lot of those early game characters that Purple Steel or Amber Emerald can have. And the one copy of the One Jump Ahead is a nice little, additional ramp tool, but I don't see any Aerial Sonic Warrior in this specific list, which I like in combination with more songs. But 2 Ink Runner. Kevin, do you want to tell everybody what Ink Runner does?
Ink Runner is a 2-cost item. It's inkable. They're very good for that part. When you play it, you get to draw a card, and for the rest of the game, you can pay 1 ink, you exert the item, and you can give one of your characters Alert. Alert is an ability that's going to let you challenge characters with Evasive. So if you thought Tinkerbell was already a threat to your board, especially after that Arthur combo, being able to challenge ready characters, imagine being able to challenge a ready Genie with your Tinkerbell Arthur Ink Runner combo. That's pretty nice. And if your opponent decides to drop an Ink Runner on you, or maybe another pesky item like Emerald Chromicon, you can also combat items with this tech card, Pluto the Steel Champion. You're going to see this Pluto a lot throughout this video, I think. A lot of players have been throwing this into their decks as just a one-shot, a one-clear out to the Emerald Chromicon. In this case, I guess you could also out Ink Runner. You don't play any evasives in this deck, so it doesn't really bother you. However, when you're playing against an aggro Amber Emerald Chromadogs deck, that one Chromicon they have can really put a damper on your ability to Vincenzo their board away, even Thunderbolt. Most of the time against that matchup, you probably can't even use Thunderbolt because they're going to snipe it out of your hand with Mowgli or Ursula. But you have cards like Headless Horseman, this deals damage. You have cards like Vincenzo, these also deal damage. But if they have Chromicon on board, these are going to go back to your hand. And they're 8-cost, 7-cost characters, so that can be a little bit of a problem, spending your entire turn playing 1 character, maybe 2 if you've been able to ramp enough. But we're far past the days of like Fishbone Quill Whole New World combo, so don't really like ink to like excessive amounts in the Sapphire Steel deck anymore. I think you kind of get to like 10, 11 if you're lucky, right? But at some point you do stop ramping. You are kind of just getting to like your top decks with Goliath and you're playing these big bodies. But man, being able to play a Headless Horseman off top of your deck and just dealing like 9 damage to a character is pretty insane. Huge shout out to David for putting Sapphire Steel back on top. I think it's a really good deck, man. It feels like it's unstoppable when they get their Goliath combo going and they keep dropping big body after big body. And if you're not playing Sapphire Steel, you're probably playing Sapphire Emerald. This is the other color combination that is dominating the meta space, utilizing the ramp package obviously, but this is some spice that was new to me. Zach's been saying that he's been known that you can use Judy Hopps in your Sapphire Emerald decks. This is the Judy Hopps Uncovering Clues. She's a 4-cost character, 3 strength, 3 willpower, that says when you play this character and whenever she quests, you get to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal a detective, and add it to your hand. You have multiple detective targets already in Sapphire Emerald because you're usually playing at least 4 copies of your Basil Undercover Detective. That's the 7-cost Basil, but you can include 3 copies of Basil Disguised Detective. This will discard cards from the opponent's hand. You kind of do already play Donald Duck to Focus Flatfoot because it's really strong to be able to go Donald into a Clarabelle or Hades because of that extra ramp. And why not throw 3 copies of the Basil Practice Detect, the 1-cost character that allows you to open up some shift lines so you can undersee the opponent a little bit earlier against those pesky aggro decks. This is really cool, man. I really think this Judy Hopps is insane. It's like a +1 every turn. You know, granted, it's not guaranteed. You can look at the top 3 cards and you whiff and you don't find anything, and that does feel a little bad in a deck like this where you're already kind of utilizing your board presence to constantly gain advantage with your Donald Ducks, your Basils, or maybe a Hades. That tempo really adds up to be able to add a free card off the top with a Judy, and it's whenever she quests too. So if you leave this card on the board, it does become a problem.
Being able to find this undercover detective 7-drop Basil is more than the reason why this Judy Hopps can be really good. Also, snowballing Judys into Judys is kind of annoying if you are having to play against it, because it's just like constant bodies that they're going to be able to find more bodies with. And it also lets them find like free ink, because a lot of the times when you're just playing Judy, you are getting these characters that aren't going to impact the board right away, but it's allowing you to ink a card that you won't really need then, right? Because you're just going to want to find your Malicious Mean and Scaries and Shift Prince Philip combos, as well as your Clarabelles, and you're welcome, so you can combo that off and draw all those cards you need. 1 copy of Bend to My Will has got to be like the cherry on top for a deck like this, because when you are just getting all this slow advantage and you're forcing your opponent to have to, like, you know, commit to the board and put all these cards in their hand, you know, the Bend to My Will can get a little clunky, so you just want it there, but you don't need multiple copies of it.
Yeah, huge shout out to Robert Foster here for getting top 8 at the CCQ with Sapphire Emerald Detectives. And in top 4 of the CCQ, we have a Chroma Dogs deck that we want to talk about. This is by James Molly. Huge shout out to you for making it that far. This is a huge tournament, man. This was like a 244 players, so it's kind of tough to get through, what, like 9 rounds of Swiss and then a top cut the following day. I think Chroma Dogs is one of the best decks of the format. It's up there with Purple Steel in my eyes. I think there's a lot of good decks in this format, though. It feels like any deck can win, but being able to play this Emerald Chromacon on board while you're just turning 2 Lord Questers sideways, it just does so much. And on top of that, this is an aggro deck that can play a board wipe. I want to stress that, and I want to say that again. Think about that, guys. This is an aggro deck that can play a board wipe. The last time we saw this was in like set 2 Rubiam. When you get to 7 ink, because you've been going friends on the other side Rabbit, you just beat prep them, and then you had goats and stuff. This deck feels like it's doing similar things. You know, turn 1 Daisy, turn 2 you could even just go double 1-drop, or in turn 3 2-drop Ursula to make sure they don't have a song, play another 1-drop, set up Tramp, set up Chromacon. Then you can either go Della's Moon Lullaby Under the Sea combo, or you just dig for your Chromacon and just turn everything sideways. You know, sometimes you just don't even need to board wipe the deck. It really just depends on what you're playing against, because if you're gaining like more than 10 lore and your opponent's barely dropping their first Cinderella because they're a Sapphire deck, you probably just don't need to Under the Sea anymore, right?
Yeah, you're also going to have that hand knowledge because you're going to see their hands so much with Mowgli's and Ursula's, but yet this family dog is making the return in the Chroma Dogs deck. It's nice to see, because she really wasn't included during the Fabled format, and now with the Shift Lady, it's all more of a reason, because the 1s and 2s you can get back are just going to be like game enders right now. Being able to just find more Mowgli's and Ursula's for the late game Emerald decks to stop the Malicious Mean Scary combo is also really strong, and Purple Steel just has a bunch of songs that remove your characters, so why not get those cards out of their hand? You are not going to be too happy to have that Chromacon in against another Emerald Sapphire deck, because the 1-drop Clarabelle is going to easily remove that, but that's not going to be your game plan into that matchup. You're really going to try a quest out and end the game as soon as you can, but you are able to stop the Malicious Mean and Scary Prince Philip combo, so that just makes this deck really hard to play against.
I also really want to stress that Della's Moon's Lullaby really helps the Under the Sea combo. This is a card that lets you -2 strength from an opposing character. That can put most characters in range of this Under the Sea. My favorite part about it, Zach, is that you can use this on an Iago or any other illusion characters. Pop and draw. It's pretty good, man. Let's go over the results of the next CCQ. This one hosted by Battle Bear at the Stuttgart Comic Con. And yeah, we have Blurple taking first place. Looking pretty cool. Demona in Blurple. That sounds really scary. Being able to draw 3 cards, and I can't believe they're still playing second star to the right. Huge shout out Devin B over here. I feel like second star to the right is such a scary card to play when Ursulas and Mowgli's are running rampant, right? But I guess maybe you're not favored in that matchup anyways if it's a dog deck and you're Blurple. But I don't know, man. Like this card's kind of scary for me to play, but it's very, very strong. Huge shout out Omar. We're playtesting this week and he was using Blurple and he was using second star to the right and Demona. This feels unfair, man. Drawing 3 or drawing 5, you know what I mean? A couple other key cards I want to mention real quick. Zackstone, how do you feel about Elephant right now? 4 copies of Elephant in Blurple. To me, it totally makes sense. I think like Ruby Amethyst and Amethyst Steel were some of the like more anticipated decks for this weekend. Like Purple just doing really, really well right now, and like Steel just cannot handle this 3/7 body that can move damage counters too. I think Elephant is so strong right now. What do you think?
Elephant is really good into the meta that we have right now due to the fact that we have Blurple and Sapphire Steel and Emerald Sapphire just being the only matchups you don't want it for. And the reason is because like characters like Hades or other ways to remove big bodies just isn't favorable for you, but Elephant just sticks into any other matchup, and it's a force to be reckoned with. A lot of the times, players cannot quest because Elephant will not only trade into a character, it forces the opponent to have to trade more stuff into the Elephant on the following turn. So you have to kind of make a decision whether you're going to, quest against this Elephant or not. Most of the time, that's going to really be decided on whether you have characters with high enough willpower and or evasive characters. But besides that, yeah, you really can't turn anything sideways with that on the board. But that's not going to matter because Elsa's and Demona's are coming down and doing that for you. So Elephant's always going to be able to get value as long as you stick it onto the board early. I do kind of want to talk about this, second star to the right Demona confliction. I don't really think it's actually a bad thing at all with Demona being inkable. I know second star to the right is not inkable, but we play so many 5-drops, and let's pay attention to the amount of 4s and 1s we have because we can play a 1 and a 4 and a 5, and that's 10, and that does sing second star to the right. So you can really get that card down as early as turn 4. Turn 4, turn 5, right?
True.
Because you're just going to be able to sing that song. And afterwards, after you're playing all these cards you draw, after you expend everything, you have Demonas as another way to draw more characters. And you can just turn things sideways still. You don't need to draw cards. So that's also another reason.
Yeah, Demona being a mass exert alone is like justifiable enough to play the card in most decks. I think the idea of giving your opponent 3 cards sounds scary, but in a game like Lorcana, like you're just so limited to your ink resourcing, right? Oftentimes you can give them 3 cards in their hand, but your opponent's only gonna be at 6 ink. They're gonna have the ink card in hand to play both cards anyways, and they're probably only playing a 3 and a 3 at most. So Demona being a 6 cost 5/6 usually can generate you value off those trades alone. And then, like I said, turning everything sideways. That's something that your opponent probably wasn't playing around. The value trades you get when you can swing with your Demona Betrayer of the Clan or your Elephant or even something like a Royal Guard Zackstone, because you're gonna draw cards off of that, insane. I do want to mention something though. You said Elephant not that good against Sapphire Steel. I just want to disagree a little bit. I understand get shot by Hades, right? But if they Hades down my Elephant, that's chill. I think the thing about Elephant against Steel, like any Steel deck, is that they cannot use Strength and Thunderbolt. Like, yeah, they can, but are they really gonna have 7 characters for them to strength you, like before you can like tap one sideways with Elsa or Demona, and then or they have to use a combination of like Thunderbolt Strength. Yeah, and it's a lot of resources to deal with, but just wanted to throw it out there. I think against Sapphire Steel, Elephant's still broken. And speaking of broken, Ruby Amethyst has to go in this video. I think it's a broken deck right now, man. We got the Ruby Amethyst list from the top 8 of this CCQ as well. This is going to be by Marvin M. Huge shout out you. This list looking similar to Donald's list that won the CCQ last weekend. I think some of the biggest differences though, 3 copies of Hypnotic Strength. A lot of Iagos running around nowadays, and I think Marvin kind of understood that you got to prepare for that a little bit. So you just throw in the Hypnotic Strength in there, give it some strength, draw a card and pop it down. That seems pretty nice. I like this deck a lot. I think being able to play 4 Demona in a deck is pretty good, especially when you can just spam 2 Lore Questers. You got Genies, Diablos, Sisus, Horsemans. Very, very good. And then the Hercules Mighty Leader, the 1 copy, to kind of close the game out or maybe even get some value trades. Very strong deck, right, Zach?
Yeah, let's even talk about that Hypnotic Strength a little bit more in depth, because I think with characters like your Tinkerbell 1-drop, you can safely deploy this onto the board, and some people are going to feel really good into that because they're going to drop a Palace Guard, right? That's a 1/4 body that is going to be able to contest the Tinkerbell if it quests, but Hypnotic Strength being on curve, coming down, and removing the 1-drop can throw the tempo off so severely, it's crazy, right? Like against Purple Steel, my turn 2, I'm going to play something that doesn't necessarily contest the Tinkerbell too well. What, a Black Heron and a Calhoun? That means I'm trading into the Tinkerbell. Turn 3, you're able to drop your Peter Pan or your Sisu or even a Cheshire Cat, and it's just going to be a little bit harder to get that tempo back. And if I'm playing Purple Steel, that's one character down for me not to be able to strength a 4 willpower body. It's actually really important. I really want to highlight that interaction will change games, but the other one that will change games is the Demona and the They Never Came Back combo. This action is a 3-cost inkable that allows you to choose 2 characters that cannot ready at the start of the turn, and you draw a card, but doesn't need to choose exerted characters. So again, more actions that get rid of illusion characters is really important because we are starting to see a lot of illusions come back into the Amethyst decks.
Yeah, in this matchup, I like playing Purple Steel and I like playing Ruby Am. I'm an Amethyst enjoyer, right? So in this matchup, when I'm playing against Ruby Am, I tend to ink my Iagos and my Palace Guards kind of in the early game because, I do not want to get caught by a curve of Palace Guard Iago and they respawn with They Never Come Back. It's just too much of a tempo loss. And when I get to do it, it feels too good not to do.
Now that we're on that topic with Amethyst Steel being like, the one of the better decks, we have a list here from the same Battle Bear CCQ. This one is looking a lot spicier though. We want to talk about a few cards here. We have the Iago Stompin' Mad. This is a 2-cost inkable 0/2 with 1 lore, and it has Challenger +5. This is going to swing and take out a lot of big bodies in this meta right now. I think it's going to be able to contest Cheshire Cats really well, and also we can contest a lot of the Sisus coming in. But the Mayor Winddancer in this deck is just another 4-drop body that I'm not so sure about. Let us know in the comments down below if you like Mayor Winddancer in your Purple Steel decks, because I'm not the biggest fan. I'd rather play something like that 4-cost Demona. I think the ink ability is just really important in this kind of deck because you have to play like some uninkables that don't seem favorable. But another thing to talk about is this great Illuminary location. This is a 2-cost inkable, 1 move cost, 3 willpower that reads, characters here gain the ability to exert themselves and draw a card. It does have 1 lore on the passive lore gain. So remember, guys, at the start of your turn, before you draw, you gain that lore from your locations.
Yeah, locations feel like a thing of the past right now. Not a lot of location love in the meta, right? It does feel like we do need to remind folks that you can play locations in your deck, and the Great Illuminary is not a terrible one. I think the only issue is that it just has 3 willpower. There are some rush characters in the game right now, but I think Elsa Fitzspirit is really the only character that's rushing things down outside of Monstro. So it does feel kind of safe to play this card. You can play it on like turn 5 and you still have 3 ink left over to move some characters in there and start gaining some value. But I think that's what you really want to do with this card, is you want to not play it on turn 2 or maybe not even on turn 4. You want to save it till like 6 or 7 ink turns so you can move your multiple characters, especially maybe that Mayor Winddancer, so you can just start gaining value, because then your opponent has to choose, am I going to use characters to take out this Winddancer now that it's sideways, or am I going to prioritize the Great Illuminary, which 9 times out of 10 they're going to prioritize the Illuminary so you don't draw cards, and that means you can turn your other character sideways for an extra turn. So real quick, to compare the Winddancer with a Demona, because I think the ink ability is a little bit more important too. The Demona has a 4/6 stat line, but she gains Challenger +2, so she will swing for 6, which can clear a Hades. Mayor Winddancer cannot clear a Hades. That is my main concern. Also can't clear a Clarabelle. But 4, 5, 7 still very powerful. I think regardless, being able to play a body like that on turn 4, very strong. And I think it's either between this one, Iago, which has evasive as a 4/6, or the Demona Challenger character. So you have options there, right? And last thing I want to say, I know I'm yapping, but the Elsa Exploring the Unknown 3-cost on-play draw card, probably one of my favorite cards in Lorcana right now, man. I gotta try this list. I'm excited. I really want to try this list out. It even has Olaf. Zach, I know you're an Olaf fan.
Yeah, this Olaf does do wonders, and I can imagine just throwing him in the Great Illuminary and turning him sideways, getting a free card, and your opponent doesn't want to get rid of it, so do it again next turn.
And just one more time, huge congrats to Devin for taking down the Battle Bear CCQ with Blurple. Blurple back on top. top, guys. Do not give up on this deck. It's a very scary deck, especially into this purple steel ruby amethyst meta we got going on. And here we have, once again, Blurple on top. First place of the Singapore DLC. Now, we didn't talk about this first, even though it's a Disney Lorcana challenge that had 440 players. The reason we didn't bring it up immediately is because this event was a best of one event up until Top Cut, right? It was a top 64 cut, but before that, a best of one Swiss tournament. Very interesting. And a lot of the top 8 and top 16 consisted of amethyst steel. Very interesting. Wow. Like, yeah, so much amethyst steel in this top cut. Huge shout out to all these crazy names. And Earl Meister's up here. I know Thiago topped as well. We have Jacob Frank, though, with first place in the with Blurple. With Sapphire Amethyst. Here's the first place list by Jacob Frank. Huge shout out, taking down a DLC in Singapore with Amethyst Sapphire. Now, I think this is probably one of the most consistent decks you can take to a tournament like this. You have to go through a best of one format, so you got to make sure that your strategy is consistent and you have the matchups set and you're ready to go. And I think a deck like Blurple, or I think playing a color like Amethyst, is probably going to get you there, because Amethyst just has the most draw power in the game, and in my opinion, draw power equals consistency.
I do just want to kind of add, Kevin, it was still a best of one until they reached top 8. So top 64, top 32, and top 16 were still played best of one.
Really?
Yes,
Okay. I didn't know that part.
They
Oh,
were.
jeez. I didn't get a chance to watch the stream. Did not get a chance to watch the entire stream. Been watching a lot of clips from it, but oh man, that is so cutthroat. Like, you have to have a deck and a strategy, man. Like, I mean, that's what you have to have for every tournament, right? But like, you can't just go into a tournament like that with the same mentality that you would going into your locals or even your set champs. Like, it's just, you have to really prepare for that. Oh my goodness. And okay, so let's talk about this deck list, dude. 2 Demona, 1 Elephant. Less impactful cards than the other list we saw earlier from the CCQ, right? That one had 4 and 4, and this one looks like it's opting to play Monstro and 4 copies of the Junior Woodchuck guidebook. That guidebook seems very consistent, right? Like, it's a lower cost draw power as opposed to like 6 cost. There's no second star to the right in this deck list, which that seems inconsistent to me. I feel like I'd be very, very mad if I was in a best of one format and my opening hand was double second star to the right. So I just wouldn't even risk playing that. Right? How you feeling though?
Well, it's for sure something to consider, but remember, the guidebook can just be played and not popped immediately, so you can just let it sit and just have the additional draw when you would want to. And they are playing 2 copies of Magical Maneuvers. I like this 2-cost action. It is inkable, and it allows you to exert a chosen posing character and then return a character on your side of the field to the hand. And yeah, this is just a way to just kind of manipulate the board, and you have the tools like Demona and Elsa already that do that. But remember, this is an action, so we can get rid of some illusion characters with that, and returning cards like Hades and like your Bell that just have the ability to replay over and over again can be a really important tool. You can use it too to like quest, bounce back like some ink in like some desperate situations if you're finding yourself needing some more inkable cards. But you really are going to be able to play a lot of games, and that is the important part about Blurple, is that you get to have a game most of the time. You find your 2-drop ramp and you are in there. But if you miss, now we have the Cheshire Cat, so it's still a playable 3-drop, and you're not too far behind if that's what you have to do. So again, congratulations for Jacob Frank for taking down the DLC in Singapore.
And speaking of consistency, here we have the second place list by Christian Laxmono. This list looking a little bit what some would call maybe inconsistent, but again, it's playing Amethyst, and I feel like Amethyst is just one of the most consistent colors. And in general, with Lorcana, the hand altering process is just broken. So you can kind of develop a strategy off of like, I'm just gonna hard alter for the right cards I need. But Purple Steel, very, very strong. We got Olaf and Doc combo. The thing about playing an Olaf with a Doc is that if this Olaf gets if it gets banished in any way, shape, or form, you can bounce back your Doc to your hand, play it again, draw 2. You can do the same thing with Madam M Elephant. We got 1 copy of Elephant, 1 copy of Hypnotic Strength, and 1 copy of White Rose alongside the 1 Pluto Steel Champion, which I'm going to assume is for that pesky Chromicon, right, Zach Stone? In fact, you played 1 copy of Pluto Steel Champion too at the CCQ, didn't you? You big brain Lorcana player.
Well, yeah, I did throw 1 copy in there. It was kind of just a decision I made last minute. Not saying it was bad at all. It's just the truth, right? But the card in theory is supposed to answer Chromacon. However, it does have the additional ability that whenever a steel character of yours that is Pluto challenges and banishes a character in a challenge, you're going to gain 2 lore. It's basically a Calhoun effect, right? And let's really think about that. That is a turn 1 Captain Hook into a turn 2 either a Black Heron or a Calhoun, maybe now into a turn 3 Genie or a Giant Cobra or a Lexington. You can pretty much curve out 1, 2, 3 on steel characters. Of course, you're playing a 4-drop Genie. That's obviously the best 4-drop you want to play. And then on turn 5, if your opponent just starts turning sideways, if you drop that Pluto, you are just going to win the race, no doubt about it. Like Captain Hook is going to gain you lore. If you have a Calhoun, that's double the lore. Lexington and Giant Cobra both have 4 strength. They're taking out whatever they swing into, and Genie's questing for 2. So right there, that's about 8 to 10 lore, and there's no way you lose from that.
Imagine you curve into that 5-drop, and then your 6th-drop is a Demona. Your opponent, they don't even have to turn stuff sideways. You force them to turn stuff sideways. It's like perfect curve, right? Like everything has to work out in your favor. But that's insane. That's broken. We got 2 copies of Thunderbolt, 4 copies of Strength of Raging Fire. The list that we saw from the CCQ in the other CCQs was playing 4-4. I'm leaning more towards like 4 Thunderbolt. I think Thunderbolt's just a really good card. It's not a long game Zeus for any like former Lorcana rotation players, but it's kind of there. The 4 damage is pretty good in this meta. You can clear Genies, you clear Iagos, you clear Dumbos, which is very important in these like purple mirror matches. So I'm more partial to wanting to play more copies of this card. But it is an inkable, so I can totally see that. No Mayor Wind Dancer. No Mayor Wind Dancer in this list. So it's very interesting. It's a very interesting format, right? Being only in best of 1 up until the top 8. So what I do like about Amethyst Steel, though, in a format like that, is that you're able to sway. I think you're able to sway the tempo game in your favor if your opponent misplays or if you just see the right cards. Like you can see a combination of Strength, Thunderbolt, Elsa, and you clear your opponent's entire board, even if you're on the draw. And it just doesn't matter. They can't do anything. Or if your opponent isn't respecting certain cards like Hypnotic Strength, like Zach was saying earlier, that could be detrimental to their game plan. Huge shout out to Christian getting 2nd place at the DLC. You guys got to go watch the stream, go watch these players, because yeah, man, getting it all the way up, it's interesting because like getting all the way up there with best of 1, then you see the top 8 players go down. Like you just see like it's like you really just see like really good players duke it out. One thing I did like about this DLC is that it was a top 64 cut as opposed to the ones we're having in our North America space or even Europe. They're only top 32 cut. So we do get to see some extra spicy deck lists in this top cut, right? And like you said, best of 1 up until top 8. We have a Ruby Amethyst list that was in top 32 by Chris Oyola from Team Luxury. Huge shout out to Team Luxury and Chris Oyola. They're awesome people, and I gotta give a shout out because they're awesome players, man. Chris Oyola, very consistent player, usually doing well at the DLCs, and to see him do well at this one with a Ruby Amethyst list, I'm hyped. I've been trying this list out as soon as I saw it, and I just gotta say, Next Stop Olympus, slept on. Next Stop Olympus with Dumbo, insane. Did you guys know that Dumbo is not like once per turn? So if you ready your character with Next Stop Olympus, you could just keep using Dumbo's ability over and over again. It's so clean. You can set up just some cool lines with a shark and a Dumbo, and then you horseman them. Boom, boom, boom. You just gain lore over and over again if you have multiple Next Stop Olympus. It's really strong, man. I've been feeling like Ruby Amethyst has been missing like lore burst ever since we lost Goat, and like White Flower just doesn't do it, man. But Shark plus Next Stop Olympus, man, this card's crazy. Huge shout out Chris Loyola. You've given me like life. You've revived my faith in Ruby Amethyst with this list. I think the only changes that I would like to see would be this Ursula, the 5-cost Ursula. I'm not convinced on this card. I see a lot of people play it. Guys, let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, if I'm just being incorrect here. Zach, you too. I want to see more elephants. I think Mim Elephant is such a broken card in this deck and just in general right now. And then we got 1 copy of Medallion Weights and 1 copy of Swooping Strike. An extra action for your Shark. It's just 5 actions. I think Shark's just good alone. Like you don't need like the best actions in your deck to make Shark good. Shark is a standalone good card. Medallion Weights, I don't know about this card. It's high cost, but sometimes this just kills the steel matchups because it makes all your characters very, very strong, right? So your Vanellope's can kill Elsas, your Genies can kill fellow Genies. I don't know. How are you feeling about these little tech cards in here, Zach?
I think that the tech cards aren't necessarily bad. I want to just kind of throw out there that like we are looking to kind of like take some wins away from our opponent, especially it being a best of 1 and a 7-round Swiss tournament. So it's cutthroat. You have 1 shot, and if you are not able to win the 1 game you are playing, that's a loss you have to accept and move forward with. So The card choices here, like the one ofs, are just allowing you to get a little bit of an edge, and there's some synergy behind them because giving your like even your Tinkerbells or your Vanellope Von Schweets like the extra 2 strength with medallion weights is like enough to take out some like pretty hefty characters, and they don't see coming. I think a lot of people wouldn't really respect it, and you're also going to dictate what they do because you have a lot of cards that turn their character sideways. And again, swooping strike is just another one of those actions that does that same thing. I don't think it's an action that can remove the illusion characters, so you aren't going to be able to do anything there. But the next up, Olympus, is also pretty cool because remember, when you are challenging something and removing it from the board, you are gaining that extra lore off the next stop Olympus. So that is another way to make sure you are closing out this game and ending it with the Shark Olympus combo.
I've seen people also just use Next Stop Olympus on my Ready Diago because you can just choose a character regardless of whether or not like it's going to be exerted. It just says Ready Chosen Character. You just choose a character, right? Swooping Strike plays around Ward, so that's really cool against that Prince Philip combo, right? And I think one of the biggest things I also need to mention is that Next Stop Olympus can be played for free if you have a 5 strength or higher character. And Zach, you mentioned before, if you drop Horseman, most of the time you're dropping Horseman because you want to banish a character, so that's going to bump that Horseman to 5 strength. So Next Stop Olympus kind of just feels like a free card in your hand, like a card that you don't have to pay ink for, almost a song that does not get hit by Ursula. I like it a lot. Huge shout out to Chris Oyola, keeping the Ruby Am dream alive, man. This deck is pretty cool. Best of one format, I think, allows for a deck like Amber Steel to thrive, man. Huge shout out to Anna Lee over here, making it to, I believe, top 64 with Amber Steel. Amber Steel aggro. I feel like this deck in a best of 3, it's tough. It's tough because if you're not going first, you don't have the advantage in game 1, and in games 2 and 3, your opponent knows what you're doing, so they know how to alter their hand to stop you. But hey, in the best of 1, they might not have prepared for you to go Daisy into Eloinui Rapunzel combo, or Lady, or even something like Aurora Tiana, bro. Aurora Tiana turn 1, if your opponent is not prepared for that, you're just going to run away with that game. That's pretty cool. Huge shout out. What do you think of Amber Steel right now, man? Because I know there's a lot of Amber Steel enjoyers out there who they want to see their deck still playable, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a world where Amber Steel is a deck that can work, but it's just consistency that I think is why it's not the deck that people want to gravitate to right now. Let's look at the draw power that's available. We have Mulan that does allow you to cycle cards, but doesn't allow you to net extra cards. So digging is going to be the goal with that card, but finding your dock is kind of the only thing that you can do, right? You won't have a way of generating extra card value, and you will be giving your opponent some with the Daisy Duck Donald State. And well, that could also end the games and just be what you need to close it out. It also does disrupt a little bit of what the opponent's game plan could be. They may have too many cards in their hand, and they may not know what decision is correct. And that can also make them make some mistakes. So I like cards that do that. But Rapunzel, Ready for Adventure, and the Eloini combo allows you to protect your high willpower characters like your Nala or the Daisy Duck, but you have plenty of 2 lore bursts to just end the game out. And don't forget Raja just protecting those 2 lore questers, and Pete to make sure you can't get spooky sided can end those games. So I'm not surprised it made it to top 64, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does well in an event like Richmond later on in January. So who knows? You have to be prepared and know what you need to do against this deck.
All right, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think best of 1 is low-key goated. Best of 1 might actually be the correct way to play DLCs because we get to see deck lists like this. This is the Power Ink by the Power Pig. This is in the top 64, and it's an Emerald Amethyst aggro deck playing the Family Fishing Pole, Enigmatic Ink Caster. These are cards I've never even read. I mean, I read them once while opening up the packs, and I'm like, womp, bulk, don't need it. But now I read them again, and I'm like, these cards are broken. How'd I sleep on this? Yeah, very interesting, guys. And it's again, I'm gonna get grilled for this, but I like the idea of 2-game format, best of 1 format. Like best of 3, very traditional, very cool. I don't mind it in Top Cut, but I just like seeing decks like this thrive, man. But I understand it could ruin your day, ruin your tournament run if you are playing something like, let's say, like Sapphire Steel, and your opponent gets to go first, and they start playing Merfolk into like Flynn Diablo, into Scrooge McDuck or something, and then all of a sudden they go Fishing Pole to bounce back their character so they can quest again. Very nice. This deck is just super aggressive. Like you have a lot of 2 lore questers, you have a lot of ways to draw cards, but These cards are also going to give your opponent's cards. We have 3 copies of Show Me More. Both of you draw 3 cards. 4 copies of Amethyst Chronicon. Both of you draw a card. Very interesting. But you're able to burst the lore in this deck as well. 4 copies of Gathering Knowledge. 3 White Flower. This is my family. Let's go over the Enigmatic Inkcaster. This is an item that says you can exert this, and if you've played 2 or more cards this turn, you gain more lore. And with the amount of 1s and 2s you have in here, it doesn't seem too hard to play more than 2 cards, right?
Yeah, I do think Enigmatic Inkcaster will count itself if it's the second card played that turn as well. So you can just go turn 1, and you could just like play a 1-drop and play the Inkcaster and then gain that lore.
That's cool.
Let me know if I'm wrong in the comments. I haven't confirmed with my fellow judge Phil. He would pretty much correct me on the spot, but
Local
I
Judge
believe
Phil,
that's
shout
how
out.
it worked. I believe that's how it works. But let's go over this family fishing pole as well. This is on Fabled. I think we don't really think about it a lot because Fabled was the reprint set, but this is one of the few 33 newer cards introduced, and it's a 2-cost inkable item. It does have an ability that says it enters exerted, but when it's ready, you can exert it and pay 2 ink to banish it and return an exerted character on your field to your hand and gain 2 lore. So let's think about it, right? We can also return characters like the White Rose or Honey Marin and gain lore, but we have the boosted Flynn Rider, and what that has cards underneath it. If you return it to your hand, you get those cards too. The boosted cards follow wherever the character goes. So that's another way of getting more cards to your hand, like Amethyst Chronicon and Show Me More can do. And you have Webby to be able to accelerate your ink. I want to kind of mention that this deck doesn't need to ink past like turn 2 or turn 3. So most of the time you can kind of proc off the Webby and get some free ink, honestly, without having to ink from your hand, which means every card you can play from your hand is more gas.
And last but not least, we have a Dog Pile We Back update by Royce Townsend. This is first place from the Safari Zone 48-player tournament. Like I've been saying, man, Dogs, one of the best decks. And I think one of the best cards in Dogs right now is Pluto, the Friendly Pooch. This is going to allow you to play your Tramp Street Smart Dog a whole turn earlier, right? So if you're able to set this up with 3 characters on turn 2, by turn 3, you can turn this sideways and your Tramp only costs 3. You can ink, play the Tramp out, dig for your Chromacon. 4 copies of Chromacon. Kind of wild to me sometimes, but I mean, you got the Scrooge, you got the Bobby, you can discard it, right? I think it's just because you really want to see it in your hand as soon as possible, right?
Yeah, and not only do you want to see it as soon as possible, you also just want to have a lot of little bodies on the board, and just finding a bunch of 1s and 2s and having to discard them doesn't feel that bad, especially when you're discarding characters like Lilo Escape Artist. This is just a 2-cost inkable 1/2 lore quester. That's ability allows it to enter play during the start of your turn. Now, it does have to spend the 2 ink and it does come into play exerted, but it's just another character your opponent has to really remove every turn. And if you have the Chromacon up, that's just gonna not allow them to develop a board, right? Like they're gonna have to start playing characters and start letting you quest on the following turn. By then you could find a Raja, the 3/4 bodyguard, that could stop them from getting rid of these 2 lore questers that you've amassed onto the board. And if they even do manage to get rid of it all, Miss Park Avenue 5-drop lady can add 2 of them back, and you never know, because that 4 strength can swing into something, and Gogo Tamago can gain 4 lore.
I gotta ask, Zach, how do you feel about the Pluto into Raja curve? Because I know some people have said that that's overpowered, but I've also heard the opposite, that it's not really the play you want to be doing with this deck.
So I think this is probably the play you do in a Circle of Life Amber Emerald deck. I don't think that's the line you want to take in a deck like this. I think it's just very important to play the Street Smart Dog as early as possible, and until you've amassed a bigger, wider board, that's when you kind of want to wait for the Raja, right? Because if you wait to play the Raja on turn 2, that's just going to give you a higher statted body to contest the board, but that's not what you want to do, right? You don't contest the board too much with this deck. You kind of just build your board. So you're going to allow them to play whatever they want, any high statted character they so choose. Well, you just play your 1s and 2s and sitting there smiling. Well, one turn you just decide to go everybody sideways, and that just means that you got to do it one more time and you end the game.
Yeah, real quick, I see a lot of players drop Chromacon on 3 and not turn their character sideways that turn. I think because they want to like keep characters on board for Tramp, but I just think that's like too many turns that you're giving the opponent. Like I think you have to choose either Chromacon on 3 or set up for Tramp on 4. Or no, Pluto Tramp on 3. I think that's just better. But for sure, the turn you play Chromacon, you got a quest. But I think it's develop your board first, play the Chromacon after, quest with everything, and stare at your opponent. With a very good deck, very good deck. Huge shout out to Royce Townsend and to all the players that we featured today for doing well at your tournament. So let us know in the comments down below, guys, what is the best deck of the format? What should I take to Richmond? I'm not in the main event, I'm in the side events, but is it Sapphire Steel? Is it Blurple? Or is it, one of these other outlier decks that didn't necessarily win an event? How are you feeling down below? Let us know in the comments, Zach Stone. Anything you want to say before we call it a day?
Yeah, these was an exciting, interesting weekend for Lorcana. I know this following weekend we are going to be looking into some potential Infinity decks because the Infinity weekend is the week after that.
Ah, yes.
And I know
Yep.
a lot of people are looking to go to local game stores and sign up for the Infinity weekend tournament. So make sure you guys look into that. Find out when your local game store is hosting that and pay attention to any Infinity trends because I know a lot of people that are just looking to play their favorite inventor again. If you know, you know. But until then, Lorcana Goons, stay tuned, and we'll see you Goons next time.